Scott Ottenberg. Not only is he our new council member, but he is our new committee member as well. So with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Ms. Patrick, please take the roll.
Okay, Chair Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Galani,
Here.
Councilmember Jaxie,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon, Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here, and thank you, Chairman Edens, for that welcome.
and Councilmember Flasher. Will be here shortly.
And
Thank you.
Councilmember McCutcheon let me know she won't be able to make it tonight. So I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
Motion
Moved
made.
by Councilmember Galani, seconded by Councilmember Jaxie. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, non-debatable, actually it is debatable. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? I have got to get with it. So let's see, do we have any public comments tonight?
No, ma'am, we do not.
And no one in attendance that would like to
No,
comment
ma'am.
as well? Okay, moving on to discussion items. We've got a couple of things that are ready for action. So Julian, would you like to make an introduction update to the guide?
I shall. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. In front of you tonight is based on the schedule of, and I'm hearing an echo. Carla, I'm going to mute you. Sorry about that. So in front of you tonight, I have a schedule at the beginning of the packet that is just to repeat what you've seen in the past to show the work that has been completed to date as far as the update to the city's economic development guide. And just for your all benefit, especially our new committee member, this is just regarding the 5-year update to the city's economic development guide. And all of you, again, should have a copy of this bound document somewhere at home with you on your nightstand, somewhere for your viewing and reading pleasure at some point in time. But hopefully you all have at least had a time to look at it, flip through it, and have a general idea about what it says and its purpose with the community. But the process that we're going through right now is the work to do the 5-year update to this document that the city developed in 2016. The committee's been working on this process since January and outlined a schedule to go through the complete process for an update to this planning tool from February 2021 all the way through a complete review and hopefully adoption towards the middle of 2022. And so that schedule is to show everybody the current status of this review and update so you can see the intent of tonight's meeting and which part of the process we are currently at. With that said, in front of you tonight is some very preliminary draft content for your all's review. Just for everybody's purpose, this document tonight is not formatted in any specific way. It's not meant for presentation purpose, public consumption, production of any kind. I did not include any photos or chapter pages or headers or anything like that. It's really only meant for our internal review by this committee tonight. As this process is extensive and will go on for the better part of the next year, we can, as this committee, update, expand on certain content, make changes, add, remove throughout this process. So I just wanted to provide that that understanding for everybody that the text that's in front of you all tonight, just as draft components for the pieces of the Economic Development Guide, are exactly that, just draft content for your all's review. The outline and the two pieces that you all have in front of you tonight are based off the framework that the committee had reviewed and adopted earlier this year when we were discussing as a committee the different chapters that should really be included in this 5-year update to the Economic Development Guide. The committee believed at that time that while this is an update to a 2016 guide, that it should not be just an update. It should not be a red line update to an existing document, and that we should really begin a new framework of what is appropriate and what is best for the city, maybe for the next 5 years, but potentially for the next 10 years. So we really started with a blank canvas to look at what is the best framework, what's the best approach, and how should we outline this this new planning document for the city for the next 5 to 10 years. And so the two chapters in front of you tonight, both the introduction and the status of the 2016 goals, follow that framework that the committee had approved earlier this year with draft text and just an outline for those two chapters. I know I emailed it out to everybody yesterday and put it on the agenda yesterday. I'm not sure if you all have had some time to at least go through the text a little bit, just to really catch up to speed on where we've been and what we've done over the last 5 years. Some of the original inception in 2015 and 2016 by our consultant, Housley Levine and Associates, who developed the initial guide at that time in 2016. And a lot of the regular updates of what the city has been working on for these last 5 years up until 2021. I'm happy to go through each chapter, go through each section, each paragraph, each line at the committee's request. I'm also happy to just answer questions that come up from you all. These are the first two chapters to be reviewed out of a total of 6 components that will make up the updated guide once we get to that point in the process, and really follow that initial recommendation from the committee. So for the introduction, it really covers where we are and how we've gotten here. The original impression and perception from the business community of the city, based off feedback received from the development of the 2016 guide, and how the change or how the city's impression and perception has changed from the business community since that time over the last 5 years. What has the city been doing? What have we been working on? What has the development of a full-time proactive economic development program done for the city and for our businesses and for our residents? That is really a summary of the introduction in its hopefully most simplest form. As far as the status of the goals chapter, in the original 2016 version of the economic development guide, I think the output of that guide was a series of action steps, action items, an implementation matrix with goals and objectives for what the city should focus on for those next 5 years from 2016 to 2021. Prior to the development of this full-time proactive program, the guide was really instrumental in identifying the steps that were required to create a successful program. So the action items, the goals and objectives identified in that 2016 guide really did just that. They were create a business retention expansion program, create a business attraction recruitment program, develop new relationships with the business community, create new entrepreneurship programs, those types of action items. Because now 5 years later, the city took the steps necessary to create that program and create those different pieces to the now existing program. It's important for our sake to look at those goals from the 2016 guide and provide that status, that 2021 today snapshot of where the city has gone over these last 5 years, of how have we addressed, responded to, and potentially even met each of those 5 action items are identified in the 2016 guide. We will use our current status of each action item to hopefully contribute towards at a future part of our process later on in the updated schedule, to prepare new action items and prepare a new implementation matrix that we can use for the next period of this guide and for the next period of the city. And kind of as an aside, we had talked previously that the original economic development guide for the city was developed with a 5-year structure. The chapter 6 of the document mentioned that it should be used daily, reviewed every year, and a total update in 2021, which is why we're sitting here where we are today looking at that update, that 5-year update. But we're hoping as a committee that this new version, this updated version, can be developed with a potentially up to a 10-year structure with a potential review at a 5-year mark. So it's important to recognize that the goals we review from 5 years ago and the action items that we identify for the next period of this guide can really last us for the next 10 years, with the opportunity maybe 5 years down the road to evaluate those once again. In the status of goals, we also identify, based off the work we've completed in the last 5 years, how it's impacted certain metrics, how it's impacted our business inventory, our vacancy rates, and similar occupancy rates, how it's impacted our unemployment rates, how it's impacted the different programming we've developed, And so we made sure to identify those in the status of goals section. The committee early on identified, because of what time we're at and what the different types of activities that are currently occurring parallel to this process, we wanted to make sure from the committee that we at least identify the current work being done with the town center update. What are the different changes that are being recommended by TCOT and by Planning and Zoning Commission for changes to the town center plan? Also, with the work being done at the city council level on the 2021-2025 strategic goals, how that impacts our work, and lastly, how COVID-19 has impacted our work. And so I know there's a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of pieces to digest and narratives to review, but I wanted to make sure that you all as the committee had time to review it. Have any comments, any questions, just generally about the framework, the type of content that's included, just so that we can use that and potentially prepare for the next few chapters leading into the next review, which will be community outreach at the next meeting. So like I said, I'm happy to answer any questions on the content that's been provided, or just go through any specific parts that people had questions about. I'll kick it back to Chair Edens for any questions.
And I did want to just let you guys, thank you, Julian, for your work on this and your very thorough introduction of this item. I did want to let the committee know on page 6, under action item number 2 and the status, we did have a discussion about what it would look like to host something else with SCORE St. Louis and the SBDC. I was talking to a small business owner over the weekend that actually is a Wildwood resident, and he was looking for mentorship opportunities, and there might be the potential to not only host, but to do some sort of digital format that would stay up on the website as a video tutorial or podcast. So with that being said, questions, comments, concerns? Councilmember Clark.
Yes, first I'd like to thank you, Julian, for the color coding on the green for it's done, the yellow for ongoing, and we don't have any red that we're overdue on. So that, I think that helps at a glance. Yeah, on page 7, it's I noticed this last point. Well, if I can find page 7, the last point you have on in the matrix about the sanitary sewer extension. Do we have some more information that the easement of the reserves, because the easement will go down the reserves, and then we voted on going ahead with getting the easements on the other properties up through Manchester Road, even though we're not doing the sidewalk. But that one for the reserve was in question. Are we going ahead with this? Do we know that's going to happen?
So and thank you, Councilmember Clark, for the question. I may defer on the shared use trail and the easement status to City Administrator Cross and Director Vunich, just in case they have any updates on those. I will say, as far as the sanitary sewer extension, the town center sanitary sewer district, the neighborhood improvement district that was completed in 2004, extended the sanitary sewer system for MSD, for Metro Sewer, as far west as Pond Elementary School. So the current sanitary sewer system does go up Manchester Road west of 109 to a manhole that is right out in front of Pond Elementary School, right next to the AT&T facility. So the reserve property is already on the sewer system. So any easements for the trail system that are being discussed right now do not impact the potential sewer extension. We have, and I think Joe's been involved in it long before I was, and I know Steve's been involved in some of it over these last few years. We've been discussing an extension of the sanitary sewer system to the Pond Historic District for at least 6 years. I know, potentially even longer than that. I would say in 2017, 2018, there was interest from a number of the commercial private property owners around the intersection of Manchester Road and Pond Road, namely the Pond Inn on the southeast corner, the owner of the former Pond Hotel site on the southwest corner, the owner of the undeveloped property in the northeast corner, to extend the sanitary sewer system at least to the Pond Road intersection stop sign. There was also similar interest from the owner of Big Chief Roadhouse and also from Wildwood Middle School to potentially extend the sanitary sewer system past the Pond Road stop sign and take it to a terminus point in front of Wildwood Middle School. With the help of Director Vunich and former City Administrator Thomas and Director Brown, we've conducted several open houses and public meetings and neighborhood meetings with all the property owners in that area to gauge their interest in an extension of a sanitary sewer system to serve their properties, but also their interest in financially contributing to the cost. The 2004 Neighborhood Improvement District that extended the sewer to its current terminus used a special assessment program that takes the total construction cost and breaks it up to a proportionate basis for each property that benefited from the extension of the sewer. So each property contributed their own small share towards the cost. Using that as a sample and a precedent, we proposed a similar framework to the property owners for this section as far west as Wildwood Middle. And the general response was that the commercial property owners were okay with it. They didn't really necessarily much want to pay for it. And the residential property owners really didn't want it and definitely didn't want to pay for it. And so it really slowed down the initial plans of getting it to that eventual terminus in front of Wildwood Middle School. And now more recently, we've all been talking a little bit more seriously about an immediate, maybe phase one type of an extension just to the Pond Road stop sign and focusing just on those private commercial property owners that are at the stop sign, the Pond Inn, the old Pond Hotel site, now the Clean Pro STL building, and the undeveloped corner across the street, that maybe those 4 individuals can take on the lion's share and lead the effort to extend the sewer, at least initially just to that point. Those groups are still very focused on that work. I know they've discussed cost, timing, alignment at a certain point because of the process and the current status of the shared use trail. There was discussion about would the sewer be on the south side of the road, the north side of the road. Obviously, the future of the shared use trail does impact that. So I know that's a very long response to say that there's still a very, I think, serious interest in the sewer at that location, but it hasn't gotten to any point at least at this time, that it's moving anywhere at this point. And I think Steve might have a comment on the shared use trail.
Mr. Kress.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilmember Clark, with regards to your question on the easements, you'll recall that at a council meeting a few meetings ago, there was the discussion about the shared use path. That project in and of itself is kind of put on hold for now. However, the council did give Mr. Brown and I the direction to go forward and lock up 5 of the 7 easements, and we've been doing that. So we have cut checks. We've reached agreement. So we cut checks for 3, possibly 4 of the 5. One, we are working out a payment plan because the individual owes quite a bit of money related to the NID, the sewer extension, the original bonds that were issued in 2005 and then reissued in 2012. So we are working out a payment plan to have those paid. And that draft agreement that I struck with the landowner is in the hands of the city attorney right now, just to dot the i's and cross the t's. But we still have, but as regards the reserve itself, that's part of a bigger issue with regards to the reserve. So we have not acquired that easement. There was 2 easements that we wanted to get as it related to the culvert, totally separate from the shared use path. You'll recall at the discussion of the council. And so we're working on that with the Dearberg family and others. But regarding the reserve, that is still part of the overall negotiation. So we are locking up those parcels of land when we can, just to have them as council wanted to do.
And I will add on briefly, if it's okay, adding on to Steve's comment, based off conversations with Director Brown of Public Works. Unfortunately, the easements that the city is acquiring for the shared use path will not be necessarily usable for easements for the sewer system. We have been told from MSD that the easements that are required for the use of a sewer system are different from those that we would be acquiring for a shared use trail. So even though we're currently acquiring easements for that purpose, either we would need to reacquire or renegotiate an easement agreement with those owners for use of the sewer, or more likely, and I think Director Vunas can jump in here, is that the city would potentially use its public right of way for the extension of the sewer and not require private easements.
Thanks for clearing that up. Yeah, I had that question because, you know, I think that that would be a great benefit for those people that have businesses down all the way to Pond. And, you know, for us to get the Pond Inn back up and contributing and not just sitting there empty. I think that'd be great. Then, Madam Chair, may I ask another question?
Absolutely, you have the floor.
Thank you. So I'm just wondering about your graphs. Is there some way we can put a target line on the graph? Maybe a target line or some kind of Cauchy sequence or something that shows what we're trying to achieve within the year?
Are you looking at page 8?
Well, there's a couple of them. There's the page 8 is the vacancies rates. And then the other one that I was talking about is on page, well, the unemployment rates, just to have a target that shows us what is it that where do we want to be? Because if I look at this and I don't know, I might think, well, it looks pretty good, but I don't know exactly what our target is. Maybe 7.17% of the vacancy of offices gives us about, what, 7,500 square feet still left. But is that good, or is that something that, you know, is it not good enough?
I think we can definitely research market standards and what would be considered to be a successful rate for the city, both for retail and office. We can look at data we have access to for the market and just St. Louis as a whole and see what current trends are for retail and office vacancy and compare them to our current standards. And these graphs were pulled directly from this month's manager's report, so that we didn't necessarily tweak or add anything to them for this draft. But if there's a desire by the committee to add a little bit more detail with averages or target rates, we can definitely look into that further.
Thanks.
Okay, I've got Councilmember Ottenberg and then Councilmember Dodwell, and then I will say too, Julian can look at, you know, adding a target unemployment rate, but I will say 3.2 is exceptional among developed countries. And so I think that it's reasonable as well to, that part of the goal includes being better or at the St. Louis metropolitan rate as well. So that one might have already kind of a built-in goal, but you know, being below the national average is a good sign. So we'll have Julian take into account what you suggested. Councilmember Ottenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been diligently reading through the various materials pertaining to the Economic Development Committee. And if I ask a question that's been answered in previous meetings, I apologize. It may be something that I've just overlooked. But if someone is coming to Wildwood for any number of reasons, such as a business trip or vacation or to visit relatives or something of that sort, is there plans to have on the City of Wildwood website a means to search for, say, entertainment venues or health and wellness venues like the YMCA and the yoga studio, for which there'll be a ribbon cutting tomorrow, things of that nature?
Chair, I can chime in, or you can take it.
Yes, I will put the link up to our tourism page, which we developed that. What we did not put under entertainment would have been something like the yoga studio. That's a good idea. I think typically we think of that as something that you would have a membership to, but they probably have a single rate class. If they do have a single rate class, that would be good for someone visiting, as opposed to somebody that has to purchase, you know, a class package. And perhaps if they don't have, you know, a single rate day, maybe we can suggest that for someone that's out of town if they have a relation that's already purchased a membership, that might be a good way to piggyback it. But the Y in general does offer, I think, a single day rate or something like that. But I believe it is already listed on the tourism page. But I will put that link up for you. And then, Julian, do you have anything to add?
Just briefly, so in the past, this is now probably 2 years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, the city developed our first visitor's guide. And it was a fold-out, trifold format visitor's guide for the entire city that included, among other items, a full-size trail map and trail guide for the city, expanding on our traditional trail map the city had used in the past to provide information about recommended routes, different surface types, whether it's paved, natural, chat, or other, different types of recommended paths and difficulty ratings. It also included a new town center shopping map, which was current at the time, which included a full-size map of town center and actually had pinpoint locations for restaurants and bars and banks and fitness facilities and shopping and health and wellness. That was current when we developed that document a few years ago. And I will say that visitor's guide, when we printed out 5,000 copies, were included in every new resident welcome packet that went out. It was put at the hotel. The copies are put at, and they still are, at City Hall. They're at the Chamber's office. Any place that we believe people would be coming to visit, we made sure that there were copies, adequate copies of the visitor's guide there at that location. And more recently, as Chair Edens mentioned, within the last year, this committee developed a new Visit Wildwood tourism campaign with a new website and also a new flyer. And that flyer is more of a one-page, quick and easy. And really, it's one side with information and one side with photos that shows a listing of restaurants and a listing of attractions and places to stay and shops, as Chair Edens had requested by this committee, to really have something we can just put in front of everybody that visits the city, individuals that are vendors at our different festivals and concerts and farmers markets. When somebody is visiting the city from out of town for an event, putting information in front of their face that tells them this is where you go for entertainment, this is where you go to stay, this is where you go to eat. So that was developed within the last 6 months, and that is posted on the website that Chair Edens just shared in the chat as well.
Perfect.
And
Thank you, Madam Chair.
yes, do you have any more questions? And it looks like Mr. Cross has something to add, but I will say too, if you remember from the MML meeting, that was one of the things in the folders was that pager with the visiting guide, and it does have a QR code as well. And the intent was to add the QR code and the flyer to all the parks and trail heads. I'm not sure if that's been done yet, so I'd like an update on that. But Mr. Cross, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With the chair's permission, I'd like to ask Mr. Vunich and Mr. Flasher, would any of these resources that Councilmember Ottenberg has mentioned and that Mr. Jacquin just addressed, would any of that be included in the database that you all are developing as part of the Community Outreach Task Force? Any of those kind of resources, would they be in that ultimate database that you all are developing?
Yeah. So for the most part, we're focused on non-for-profits within our community and making that stuff more feasible. Just let people know what's going on in their own community as far as non-for-profits and things like that. So it really doesn't focus on tourism-y type stuff. It's more focused on, hey, here's opportunities to get involved with these types of charities, and here's what is going on in your own city and things like that.
Okay, thank you. Any, Mr. Vunich or Mr. Cross, anything else to add before we? Okay, Councilmember.
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
I really appreciate it. Councilmember Dodwell.
Thank you. This is a great review for everybody, Julian, to take what we had in the past and be able to synthesize it for everyone in one place so that we can look at what had been done. And I'm excited to move into what our top priorities are going to be for the coming years, which we certainly worked on when we were doing our strategic plan all together. I guess one of the things that I had a quick question on was what kind of feedback, if any, have you gotten from the businesses. Have you started the discussions with any of our business owners out there yet?
We have. I have conducted 11 of the 15 or 16 interviews already. There are another 5 that are remaining to be scheduled. I have one tomorrow and one on Friday. So we've definitely conducted the majority of the interviews with the stakeholders that were identified by this committee. I was intentionally not including any of the information in this draft today. This draft was just based off existing information that we have from the past and as of today's snapshot. The feedback that we received from the 16 stakeholders will be included in the community outreach chapter, which is currently proposed to be reviewed at the, I believe, the next meeting or the meeting after
The
that.
next meeting? Is it-
And so we intentionally did not want to start summarizing information until we had everything from everybody and we could compare it apples to apples and remove the names of the innocent to make sure that it's good, consistent, and comprehensive information.
I totally agree with that. I guess I would ask that if you have that information, if you want us to be discussing that before our next meeting, any way you could send that out a week before the meeting so that each of us could review that along with the economic development section from our strategic goal plan that we have, and then maybe we can get our heads together before our next meeting, each of us with different ideas on ways that we can attain those goals.
Certainly.
Just a thought.
Okay, so it sounds like that there's consensus for Julian to proceed as forward. I don't believe there's going to be a request for a formal motion, but I see heads nodding. So are there any other comments before we move along? Okay, looking good. The sign of good work, unity. All right, so the community economic development certification did not get off the ground, but Julian, why don't you do an intro?
Sure, I appreciate it, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For those of you that were on last month's meeting, and just for the benefit of our new committee member, at the last meeting, Chair Edens proposed a new idea for a new certification program for municipalities that have their own economic development program or department. So there are existing certification programs for professionals. There's a certified economic developer. There's an economic development finance professional, and more recently, the state of Missouri is creating a Missouri Certified Economic Developer. And then there's also new, more entry-level type certificate programs for elected and appointed officials, public sector staff, entry-level more so, and public citizens that are interested in the field. There is not a specific certification program for municipalities. There is one that IEDC offers for accredited economic development organizations, and that's more for agencies, private utilities, some larger cities that have their own large departments with multiple staff and expanded resources. But at least within the state of Missouri, there is not a certified cities program. And so Chair Edens requested that this committee consider if the state or the region would support that type of program. Following last month's meeting, the instruction to me was to discuss it with state officials and see what the interest and appetite was for it. Last week, I was at the annual conference for the Missouri Economic Development Council, which I serve on the board for, and I talked to 3 leadership individuals with the St. Louis Development Corporation, the Missouri Economic Development Council, and the Missouri Department of Economic Development regarding that request. And there was not a lot of interest or support for it. The state of Missouri has just recently, within the last month, finished its first ever professional certification program, the MOCED program, which will start testing this fall. There was conversation about, now that we've finished our first program, there's not an appetite to start another program right away. The director of the MEDC mentioned that other states have tried to create their own certified cities program, and those programs fell apart shortly after rolling out. There was a comment from the Department of Economic Development about if it's a certified cities program, maybe the municipal league would be a better place to start. So largely just within our discussion from this committee and the authorization that we got following last month's meeting to discuss it with state officials, We completed that work last week. And just the 3 statewide groups that we discussed it with did not have immediate interest or support in developing that program themselves. And we wanted to bring that feedback back to this committee for your further discussion. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
So I have the dogged determination of Leslie Knope from Parks and Rec, so I'll make that reference. But I am going to a Municipal League conference on Thursday, which is the Economic Development and Human Resources Policy Board. So I will have the opportunity just to kind of have a casual conversation with some of their leadership and see if this is something that they would like to take on, since that was some of the feedback that we got. And I can update the committee if it remains dead in the water. So if there's any questions or concerns, now's the time. If not, we'll move on. Councilmember Ottenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question that I had, I'm not sure if this is the right meeting to throw this question out, but I'll do it anyway. So coming through the valley on the bike this last weekend and along the levee over to the trailhead that's on Centaur Road, the thought occurred to me that if cyclists show up there, which quite a few come through that area, they really don't have any type of a resource that would guide them to the town center.
Okay, so Scott, I'm going to go ahead and stop you because we're on a different agenda item. So
Not a problem.
we can bring that up in miscellaneous as long as it's not for action, just as a conversation.
Perfect.
Okay, sound good? Great.
Sounds good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so let's move on to for information. Julian, Economic Manager's Report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the benefit of our new committee member, I provide a monthly report to this committee each month summarizing that past months of activities. This report includes different activities of existing businesses that are expanding, relocating, investing in the facilities, having ribbon cuttings, that type of activity. Also includes the current status of new businesses that are coming to town. We can't divulge or discuss by name new prospects that haven't signed any leases or agreements yet, so we can't get into that level of detail, but we can at least discuss those that have signed leases or have already submitted business licenses, or just without naming names, generally where there's been recent activity and there are groups pursuing leases or sale purchases at. So that includes the new business activity as well as visitation meetings we conduct each month with the business owners of Wildwood, different special events we attend, and then a snapshot of how the current activity in this month impacts the total businesses in the community, how many have opened, how many are expanding, how many have closed, how that impacts our business inventory. And then if you recall from the draft contents of the update to the guide, those 2 charts, those 2 graphs that show the trends in vacancy rates and unemployment rates for the city and also the region and the country. So that's just a background on what this report includes each month. As far as some individual highlights, in case any of you just didn't get the chance to read through the specifics, there is a ribbon cutting tomorrow for Wildwood Yoga and Wellness. They are relocating, or they have relocated, from the Wildwood Square Center next to Wildwood Pub and Grill in Ward 1 across the street into the Westridge Office Center into Ward 8, and more than doubling their square footage from 1,200 square feet upwards of over 2,600 square feet, and adding a secondary studio. So the owner, Jill Dunlap's been around there for a long time. She's relocating and reinvesting and expanding her facility significantly. So we will be there tomorrow to help her celebrate with the ribbon cutting for her opening. Heels Boutique has relocated into the space next to Starbucks Coffee, right at the corner wedge, right at 100 and Taylor Road. They are pursuing different proposals and approvals for their new signage, which has been going on for the past week or couple of weeks, and occupancy permits and business licenses and so on. So make sure to stop by there. Congratulate Rosemary on relocating and again, investing in Wildwood. And then Hidden Valley Ski Resort. Several of you were aware that last Friday, there was a ribbon cutting at Hidden Valley to celebrate their reopening of their summer activities. They reopened the 4-line zip tour attraction following last year's COVID shutdown when they didn't do much of anything. So they reopened the zip tour. They've added scenic chairlift rides. They've added free hiking trails. So you have the opportunity to go and venture the property and explore scenic Wildwood, whether it's by zip line, chairlift, or just hiking around the grounds. They've had a really great support so far. I know that we are hosting our upcoming WBA social at Hidden Valley next Thursday evening as well. So both Hidden Valley Ski Resort and Vail Resorts, their owner, are being very serious and very focused on growing their presence in Wildwood. And I can keep going, Cherry. And I think there's a question.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Thank you. I just wanted to touch base with you, Julian, and see how the new owners, I'm hoping that they are miles ahead or leaps and bounds above what the previous owners were like to work with. Just curious.
For Hidden Valley?
Yes.
I would say that they are much more involved and focused on growing their presence in the community. I believe that Vail Resorts, which is now the owner of Hidden Valley and all the 17 resorts that were previously part of the Peak Resorts portfolio, has a lot of experience and a lot of resources behind them to really do a great job with making sure that their facility is successful and present and focused on doing what they can in the community. Just with what they've done so far as their marketing efforts, considering new events and activities on site, doing special event programming, even though they just opened the zip lines and they've reopened the chairlifts, talking to the general manager, Brandon, he's already thinking about what's next. And so I think they're really focused on making sure they can do best for St. Louis and for Wildwood and hopefully maximize the opportunity they have with the resort. So we've had a really good relationship and partnership with Vail Resorts so far.
Wonderful. Maybe we could do a Tough Mudder someday.
I will watch you participate, Councilmember Dodwell. I will cheer you on.
And then as far as new business activity, just jumping down to the next section, the city did release plans to the county for the potential retail store at Old Manchester Road, which we've talked about several times, being the pet cafe, the dog cafe. It's the owners who purchased that old health and wellness building on Old Manchester across the street from Grover Crossing. They're looking to make some improvements to the building to open up a pet store with the future phase for a sit-down cafe as well. So that's still moving along. And then I know we mentioned it last month, there's still a group pursuing the Llewellyn space. They're dealing with some of the logistics of negotiating a lease right now. It seems like everything is moving forward. They've agreed on all the terms. We're just waiting for a signed lease to be in hand, which should be happening any day. So just be on the lookout for that. And then we're working with a new group that's pursuing the former Milk and Honey space on Plaza Drive, kind of catty corner from Starbucks in the New Heels location as well. So there is lots of new activity as well beyond the existing businesses that are expanding. And then I did just want to note also on the second page, last week when I was putting together the monthly report, the Bureau of Labor Statistics was down for maintenance. So we did not include unemployment rates for this past month, but we'll make sure to include it in next month's report as well. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Flasher.
I'm going to ask my monthly question. Is there any traffic or anything going on potentially with the old Jack in the Box?
There is, and I have a meeting there this week. We'll just say that.
Great.
This is a nice time to be coming out of COVID with some new activity. It's very uplifting, certainly. Okay, any other questions? All right, let's move on to the July meeting day. Oh, Councilmember Clark, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess for Julian, I still, when I look at the vacancy rates, can you tell me a little, just briefly, so if I figure this up, 13% of whatever 300 and something thousand square feet and 7% of, I forgot what it was now, but 105 square feet, the amount that we have left, are we setting good with that? Or is that we have a lot left or we need more? Where are we with that? I just don't, I'm not up on it enough to understand that.
Thank you, Councilmember Clark, for the question. I will say that before COVID, we were trending in a really positive direction. I believe we were, I wouldn't say setting records, but I think we were doing a great job of filling the available space that we have. Our retail occupancy rate was cut in half from 20% to 10%. Our office space went from 32%, at least last year, to about 11%. So we were all in all cutting both of our vacancies down 50% to something that was much more manageable. I think there was still room to grow. I think during COVID, retail space and retail interest slowed down, but it seemed like at least small office space continued to be filled, and there continued to be additional interest for professional office space. At one point within the last year, pretty much all of the office space in downtown Wildwood was filled up. The only office space that was left was in the Westridge Office Center at 109 in New College, and then some smaller space along Old Manchester Road. So I will say that we did have, because of that, and the success that we had with office space in the downtown area, there was some discussion about future additional construction for new office space in the downtown portion of town center. Retail, I think we still had some room to grow. Knowing that the Prime Place is coming in soon, when we'll have 13,000 additional square feet of retail there, potential future phases closer to the intersection of Main Street and Taylor, and potentially down to Old Manchester. I think there's going to be additional space for additional retail there as well. I'll never say that we're done or that we're filled up. I think there's going to continue to be more interest, and hopefully in the future, as we're more successful and there's additional demand, we'll see a need for more space. All I can say is that we were trending in a very good direction, and COVID slowed it down a little bit, but I'm hoping that we'll continue and pick that back up now that things are reopening.
Thank you.
Director Vunich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hate to add a sour note, but with regards to Hidden Valley, I just want to remind everybody that its underlying zoning is a residential district, and it exists under a conditional use permit, which allows the ski facility and the zip lines. So I just ask for caution as we embrace the new ownership that we have a residential property that is limited in what it can do. So if there's ideas, please think about the zoning, and let's talk to the Department of Planning. Thank you.
Thank you for the reminder. It's good to make sure the right hand talks to the left.
Well, and as you all recall, there were a lot of people that lived around the facility that didn't necessarily embrace it as much as the city, and we need to respect our residents in that regard. Thank you.
Yes, I recall some of those discussions. Any other questions, comments, concerns on the Economic Development Manager's report? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our next July meeting date discussion. It would be my recommendation, after talking to Julian, that we go ahead and cancel the July meeting. It looks like both discussions can, for the update to the Economic Development Guide, can be handled at the same meeting reasonably and in a timely manner. However, I'll leave that to the discretion of the committee. Julian, do you have any comments?
I don't believe so, Chair Edens. I provided just a brief introduction, just showing that because of the adoption of the meeting schedule by the City Council for this committee to create a no meeting week at the end of July, the meeting date for July was set for July 6th, which is 2 weeks from today. So as Chair Edens mentioned, we were discussing what the committee would like to do with that meeting date. Thank you.
Not all at once, but would someone like to make a motion to either get rid of it? If not, Councilmember Clark?
Yes, I would move that we cancel the meeting for July.
Okay, seconded by Councilmember Jelani. All right. Any debate on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, abstain, it looked like unanimous consent. Okay, so we don't have any items not ready for action. Julian, do you have anything in other business news and updates?
Not aside from Councilmember Ottenberg's comment.
Yes. Okay. So depending on how you go with your comment, it may be a Parks and Rec thing, but Scott, go ahead.
Oh, yes. So I was inquiring about the possibility of some type of map providing directions from the trailhead on Centaur to Wildwood Town Center so that cyclists could find their way there easily. And by take advantage of all the wonderful entertainment and dining venues that they will have available in the town center.
I think that's an excellent point. I don't remember there being a board there. Is there a
No.
board? There's not. So we would probably need signage, hard signage or something. I don't think something laminated on a stake is going to stay up.
Yeah.
Okay, so if it requires a physical structure, Director Vunich, do you think that's a discussion that Parks and Rec needs to have?
Well, certainly it could be here at the Economic Development Committee or at Planning and Parks Committee. I would just advise you, it took us the better part of a year to get authorization for the 2 signs that are in place at the John L. LeCave Memorial Trailhead. We not only had to go through the levee district, we had to go through the United States Army Corps of Engineers, which is where it was delayed. So if there's a way to do it, I'd prefer to try to attach it to something already there and use what's in place as a structure instead of adding another one and having to go through that review process again. So if there's no objection, we can certainly explore that and see if we can do it on one of the shelters, even if it's on one of the existing signs.
Thank you.
Thank you. So anything that saves us the trouble and the cost that looks professional is a win-win. So, you know, we can put this on the next agenda unless you prefer to keep it in parks. But I'll wait to hear from you for an update.
Well, if there's no objection from Mr. Jacqueline or Mr. Cross, we can put it on this agenda.
Okay.
We'll be glad to research that for you. But as I say, it's not that we couldn't do another sign or a new post, but the levy has a number of seepage easements and things along those lines that go far beyond the structure itself. And that's where we get into the issue of just having the review. If it hadn't been for Mr. Cross calling down there finally, and just, I think, threatening to drive down and pick up the permit or something, we wouldn't have gotten the sign permits. Even, I don't think we would have gotten them. We did. So thanks to Mr. Cross.
Thank you for that. That provides me with a better appreciation for everything that everyone had to go through in order to get that trailhead established in the beginning.
Councilmember Dodwell?
Perhaps Scott can take a bike trip down, take some photos of the existing signage, and then in our August meeting, we have visuals that perhaps could have been gone over between the city staff to say what could be added to it, what types of things could be added to it, and we can have a more salient discussion on the topic then.
Consider it done.
I'm sorry to make suggestions for somebody else, but I know you're an avid cyclist. So.
I'm down there a couple of times a week anyway at the trailhead early in the morning, so I'll be happy to do it on my return.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have a topic that they want to raise? Councilmember Garitano. All right, Councilmember Garitano in chat just gave a great shout out to the planters and volunteers that landscaped, and I will tell you that was a very hot day, but I'm glad anything survived given how hot it was. Okay, all right, so with that, how about a motion to close?
Motion to close made.
Okay, Councilmember Ottenberg, seconded by Councilmember Galani. This one is non-debatable. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, is anybody opposed? I mean, no, you don't want to hang out anymore. All right, and no abstention. So, thank you for another very productive meeting. We've got out in great time. Thank you to our city staff, and stay safe, make smart choices.